Philadelphia, San Jose, or DC, Los Angeles Galaxy.
Pitch Pass.
Colorado Rapids, Vancouver Whitecaps, Seattle Sounders, Montreal Impact, USA, New York Red Bulls.
Pitch Pass, your all-access credential to the people that matter in MLS. Here's your host, Greg Roche.
Hello, welcome to the show. I think we got a good one lined up for you today. Thank you very much for downloading, and please tell a couple of friends about the show. Pitchpass.com to find us on the internet. We'll talk with the man who covers the Philadelphia Union for Philly.com, Jonathan Tannenwald. He also broke the story about Atlanta's expansion confirmation to MLS, so we'll talk with him about that. But first, we talked to the newest member of DC United and a man who scored on his debut for DC United in their win over New England Revolution. He is Chris Rolfe, and he joins us right now on the show. Chris, how are you, sir?
Good, thanks.
First, I'm also in DC, so I can say to you, welcome to the area.
Thank you, I appreciate it. It's good to be here.
How are you finding the District of Columbia, your nation's capital, if you will?
It's a fantastic city. I've spent some time here on vacation and throughout my career at MLS, and I've always been interested in the city and really look forward to getting to know it even more.
You know, Chris, that's a sneaky nerd comment that you made. You said you vacation in D.C., which I'm assuming means you did the tour of the monuments and stuff.
Yeah, back when I was younger, and then I spent some time out here when I had a friend that lived out here as well, earlier on in my career.
So have you done the monuments and the museums and all that stuff?
Yeah, at one point, but I think I'll get a whole different perspective doing it now at age 31.
Totally true. But I will say, and maybe a lot of people don't know this, the good thing about going to the museums and stuff and the monuments, it's kind of a cheap date situation because most of the stuff that you got to go to are free, whereas in other cities, they charge you stuff. But all the monuments and museums here are free, so it's nice.
Yeah, that sounds ideal. That's gonna be a game changer for me then.
So I got to ask you, what is it like? Because you went through the entire preseason with Chicago, you had the first couple of matches with Chicago. So what is it like when you find this out, and how did you find out that you were traded from the Fire to DC United?
Yeah, it was a bit of a surprise, of course. Didn't really know it was coming about. Hadn't heard much talk about it. So the morning of the day that I ended up flying to DC, I got a phone call around 11 o'clock from Brian Bliss in Chicago, and just informing me of the situation. And then shortly thereafter, DC United got in touch with me, and we set up the flight plans, and that was that.
Because I was going to ask you what went wrong in Chicago, but it sounds to me as if your way of thinking was things aren't going wrong. I'm a member of Chicago Fire.
Yeah, I was dealing with a little bit of an injury after the first game that didn't allow me to be available for the next two games. So at that point, I figured I was still in the plans and was just trying to get healthy and get ready to help the Fire. But obviously plans changed, and look, I'm excited to be here with DC, and I think it's a good spot for me. You
immediately turned around and as you said, got on a plane and were in D.C. and available for selection, and you actually played just a few days after the trade. Was it important for you to hit the ground running? And I'm not asking you to call any other players, but there was a trade last week, and both sides of the trade, they both said, you know what, we're going to take some time to get used to the city. You went the other way. Was that important to you?
Yeah, I think DC put a lot of confidence in me by letting me know that they wanted me available for the weekend, and that was a great start for me. It allowed me to kind of come into this environment with a positive attitude and, just try and get back involved with, a first-team game as soon as possible.
And I got to think that it's one of those situations where it's almost ideal. Like if you had 2 weeks maybe thinking about tactics and thinking about the differences between United and Chicago, that might have been a little too much in your head, whereas here it's, oh, I've been traded. Oh, 2 days later, I'm on the field. I can't think about anything. I can't think about tactics. I just got to go out there and go by feel.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think I play my best soccer when I'm more instinctual and just kind of, playing my way. And I think that that was definitely the case then Saturday night here in D.C. So, along the same lines, it kind of reminded me of going into like a national team game where, you just get shipped off.
Yeah.
You go to a hotel, you meet with the guys briefly, have a couple light sessions, and you play a game. So maybe some of my time with the national team helped me to prepare for that game also on Saturday.
What's it like walking into a locker room for the first time when it's not everybody walking into a locker room? And I'm thinking, okay, preseason, we're all walking in together and we meet the new people, but these guys have been together for a couple of months, and then you walk in. Do you go out and start putting your hand out? Do people come up to you? What's it like as you cross that threshold into the locker room for the first time?
Yeah, you really have to come into it with a positive attitude and try to be proactive as possible. Fortunately for me, there are some guys here with the team that I've known from the past, and they were very welcoming, and the staff was really, really great, and it was pretty seamless actually. There's a really good group of guys here in DC, and like I said, they really made me feel comfortable here the first week or so.
So as a fan of DC United, I have to ask you a question. We've heard a lot about how good this locker room is and how good the team chemistry for this particular DC United team is. Did you feel that when you walked in, or have you felt that in the week or so that you've been in that locker room? Does it feel different than other locker rooms that you've been in recently?
Yeah, 100%. Not to say anything about the locker room in Chicago, but it is quite a bit different here. There's a good positive energy coming from the guys, and even right now we've been done with training for over an hour, and I'd say 3/4 of the team are still here, interacting, eating together, playing games and stuff. So that's just kind of a great locker room for me. And when you have that kind of chemistry off the field, it definitely translates on the field. So at some point, when the chemistry is completely there on the field, this team's going to be very, very good. Okay,
and so I'm chuckling because we always get the first line, which is the chemistry's great, and then the second line is, and then when the gelling is done, we're going to see results on the field. And, as a United fan, I'm kind of going, okay, great, they get along. When is the gelling going to be completed? So, you're a new guy. You're being incorporated as well. You're another guy that needs to gel in. Take me behind the scenes. How long does it take for everybody to gel?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's situational, So it can happen extremely fast. It can also take a lot of time. I mean, it really just depends on just the way the guys come together. I mean, there's no real way to put a quantitative number on that to let you know the length of time until it's going to be possible. But I'm sure it will come and go. And with every other team in the league, there'll be a peak. So hopefully, as we start coming together, we'll start peaking a little bit later on in the year and carry that into the playoffs. I think that would be the ultimate goal.
Well, you sidestepped it, and I like that you did. I was expecting you or hoping you would say, well, Roche, it'll happen in the 53rd minute of the 7th match. The gelling process will be completed.
Unfortunately, I can't help you with that.
Bobby Boswell has come out, as soon as the trade came out, and said that you are one of the most gifted technically players in the league. Now, I don't know if he's just buttering you up because he's going to be seeing you in a couple of minutes or not, but when you hear something like that, it's got to feel good. But then on the other hand, it's like, oh, okay, now I know there's a little bit of pressure or a little bit of expectation put upon me because of this statement that was thrown out there.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that, but greatly appreciative of that comment and his confidence in me, whether it's true or not. But yeah, you're right. It puts a little bit of pressure on me, but at the same time, that's pressure that I put on myself every day. So, that's not going to bother me at all. It's not going to cause me to stress out or put any anxiety on me, but it's good to know that he's happy with me coming to the team, and he thinks that I can obviously help the team in some capacity.
You mentioned you being 31 now. When I found out about the trade, I thought to myself, oh, okay, Chris Pontius is going to be out for a while if they're bringing a guy with Chris Rolfe's track record in. Do you see yourself as any similarities between you and Chris in that you both can play wide, you both can play as a second striker, I've talked to Chris a number of times about where he prefers to play. Of those two positions, where do you feel more comfortable? Where would you like to play most often?
For me, it doesn't really matter too much. But, I think I'm traditionally more comfortable playing as a second forward. Having said that, I've had some of my best years playing as an outside left guy in particular. So both positions suit me. It's just wherever I can fit in and help, and Chris is a great player, and I'm excited to play with him at some point. I just hope he can get his injury stuff sorted out here soon.
We talk about Chris Rolfe. We talk about the technical ability. We talk about the success that you've had with Chicago, in Denmark, with the national team. But then one of the things they talk about is your health. How are you feeling at this moment as far as injuries are concerned?
Yeah, I feel pretty good. Like I mentioned earlier, coming through preseason and into the first game, I felt pretty good with Chicago and then had a little bit of a setback. So, there's a great staff here in D.C. that have already reached out to me, and they're trying to work with me to be a little bit more proactive in preventing some of these injuries from coming back. And, as a 31-year-old, I think I feel pretty good right now.
Is it a situation – first, let me ask you, you didn't play 90 minutes last week. I'm assuming it's because you were just being incorporated in a team, but do you consider yourself 90 minutes fit currently, correct?
And no, I don't.
You do not. We're breaking news. We're breaking news, Chris. What do you consider yourself then?
No, I mean I'm fit. I'm fit enough to go from the start. 90 minutes fit is a whole different level that I'm probably not at just yet. As I mentioned, after the first game, I was dealing with a bit of an injury and wasn't able to really do much, and that ended up carrying on for 2.5, 3 weeks. So, am I capable of starting a game and playing into the second half? Of course.
Okay.
90 minutes fit, especially as a wide player, is very hard to get to.
Well, and that's where all of this was leading to. I asked you where you would prefer to play. Do you feel playing wide leaves you more susceptible to injuries because of the more running that you must do? You're going to start tap dancing, aren't you, Chris?
For me personally, some of the injuries that I deal with tend to be overuse injuries. So, of course, if I'm playing out wide and I'm pushing myself to the limit every game, I'm going to probably be susceptible to some of those type of injuries, whereas if I play as a forward, I'm more susceptible to, more of the injuries that come with contact and short bursts of energy. So I think both positions, everyone kind of, is susceptible to injury. And, that's my politically correct answer.
It's very nicely done. I enjoyed it. And you know what else I like? That you've mentioned, we've probably talked for 10 minutes. You've mentioned that you're 31 about 3 or 4 times. Like, I really feel like you're like, wow, this guy really feels 31 right now.
No, the problem is I don't look 31.
No, you don't. So you have to remind people. Yeah. You know what? Hey, I'm not 19 years old. I'm actually 31. Let's talk about your goal. Great way to introduce yourself to the DC United fans and supporters. Knocking one in, which, it was the cherry on top of the sundae, the clincher for the match. You going to walk me through that? I'm hoping for a little honesty on this one, Chris. You want to walk me through that one?
Dude, I'm always honest with you. So, yeah, let's go. So as we kind of broke out from defending, I was in a good spot, and I was just getting up the line to try and help in case, we did dump a ball into the corner. We had to swing it around, and Connor Doyle did a fantastic job of putting the ball up. That was so important for us at that point in the game. And, found Fabian, and as he looked up, right then I knew he's going to play that ball. So I just took off running on a line that would kind of put me in line. If he hit the long ball, I would have a chance of getting to it. The ball ended up being absolutely perfect. And
I'm waiting. Here's the honesty part. Here's the honesty part, Chris. Talk to me about that finish.
So, yeah, first time finish. Most importantly, I wanted to put it on goal. I wanted to connect with it well. And I did that. And fortunately, got Bobby off guard, I think. And he, helped me out and let it go.
Very nicely done. I'm very glad that you put that, you phrased that very, very well. Because I looked at it, I was like, oh, what a great goal. Then I looked at the replay and I was like, well, he hit it right at Bobby, and luckily it went right through him.
Yeah, I mean, that was it. I just wanted to connect well on it, and I was focused on it. And I think a lot of the goals that I've scored over my career are because I've taken shots that goalies are not prepared for, or, they expect me to take an extra touch. So I'm sure enough I pick it off again by just taking that out of the air. Yeah,
I mean, and that's a great way to put it as well. Knocking it right out of the air, one first time, and those are situations where you want goalies off balance, and things like that will happen. I mean, you put it on net, and he wasn't expecting it, and well taken, and it had to feel good for you as an introduction, as I said earlier, to the DC United fans and supporters at home to put a goal like that in.
Yeah, 100%. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel great after that goal, and that it didn't help me, to get just into the team more.
Yeah.
I think that maybe won some guys over, and but at the same time, to be able to be a part of sealing that victory for the team, a team that deserves to have won so many more games than it has recently, and a team that has been working so hard, and the fan base, we had a good crowd that night, and just for everybody to be able to just kind of take a deep breath and say, okay, finally, now here we go. That felt really good.
And you brought up a great point that I hadn't even thought about as far as your assimilation, not just on the team, but in this city. I just like when teams gel, I don't know if there really is a official demarcation point of, okay, I'm no longer a Chicago Fire player. I am now a DC United player. And who knows how long that process could take, but it's accelerated when you knock in a goal in your first match. And so you get to do that celebration with your new teammates. And I don't know, maybe you do look around and go, okay, this is where I am now. This is the team that I'm on.
Yeah, 100%. And for me, I think mentally I've made that transition very quickly. I am a part of DC United now, and I'm very proud to be a part of this club. So that's not an issue at all. So, of course, having the goal, that does help within the locker room for having other guys, I think, accept me. But for me, mentally, I've been a part of DC United since Wednesday around noon, once it started to sink in.
So as we wrap up, it's rivalry week for DC United as they take on New York Red Bulls. For a while there, and you were on a lot of those teams, I always thought, okay, look, I hate New York Red Bulls because they're New York Red Bulls, but their kind of ineptitude from 5-6 years ago predicated that we had to find a different rival, and it was always seemed for a maybe 3-4 year stretch that Chicago was the team standing in the way in the playoffs, and most times knocking out Chicago. You were on the other side of that rivalry. What do you think of the United Chicago rivalry, and what have you been told about the United Red Bulls rivalry?
Back in my first stint with Chicago, it was always DC United.
Yeah.
I love those games. They were always competitive. DC always had very talented teams through those years, and we loved those games. We loved matching up against DC because they were a very challenging opponent, and we did have some luck against you guys as well. So for me, being back in Chicago, that was my biggest rivalry in my first 5 years in the league. So now being introduced into the rivalry with New York, it's something that I'm not all that familiar with. Of course, I'm familiar with New York and their team, but the staff and the players have been kind of harping on it already this week about, getting ready for this game, and it's a big game, and it means a lot to everybody in the city and, within the organization. So, I'm excited to get a taste of that this weekend.
Well, I wish you best of luck, Chris, and I say that to almost everybody that comes on the show, but now you know that I really mean it because you know I'm a DC United fan, so I'm really wishing you well. And I can't wait till the 53rd minute of the 7th match of the year, which is what Chris Rolfe said was the demarcation line when the team finally gels. So thank you for that heads up, Chris, and thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
That's DC United /midfielder Chris Rolfe. I enjoy talking to him. He's a good guy. It's the second time we've had him on the show, and it's always a pleasure. We've had this guy on the show many times, but not recently. I don't know what's going on. Me and him must have had a beef. We might have had some falling out, but now we're back together. He covers the Philadelphia Union for Philly.com. He is one of the more active members of the media on Twitter, so make sure you're following him at The Goalkeeper. He is Jonathan Tannenwald, and he joins us now. Hello, Mr. Tannenwald. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine. I haven't talked to you in a while. What's been going on down there?
It's been a while. But here's the funny thing. I think every time I've called you before, it's been at your desk. So this is the first time I've hit you up on the cell. You and I are like, we're doppelgangers. You're living in Philly, but you kept your 202 area code. I'm living in D.C., but I kept my 215 area code.
You know what? I lost the driver's license. I lost, all the other routes and stuff like that. Can't vote down there anymore, but I still got the cell phone area code.
Yeah,
I'll live with that.
We can't cut the cord. We've got to just move on. We're not. You're a Philly guy now, and I'm a DC guy.
Well, somebody's got to have grown up in DC at some point.
It's true,
existence, right?
It's true. Somebody has to have originally been from DC because there's maybe 7 or 8 of them, and you're one of them.
Exactly.
So first, let me get this out of the way first. Your thoughts on Abby Wambach coming out saying that the players were not behind the Sermani dismissal. Do you believe any of that?
Okay, first of all, I'm not excessively well connected on this one, let's say. They're on the other side of the country. I haven't really talked to any of the players in a while, but in my best and most drippingly sarcastic voice that I can possibly muster, if Abby Wambach says it's true, we have to believe her, don't we?
Yes. I mean, seriously, her word is gospel to me.
It can't possibly be that, there's nobody on the planet who can figure out why Tom Sermani was fired, because Abby Wambach doesn't know and Sunil Gulati doesn't know. And of the two of them, I'm a little more inclined to believe that Sunil Gulati doesn't quite know what happened. Well, I don't want to say doesn't know what happened here, but he was on a conference call earlier in the week. He said, yeah, wouldn't necessarily have been my first choice to fire him. He made it sound like, this was a guy who he genuinely really liked and thought very highly of, and maybe there were some other factors at play. And then Abby Wambach comes along and says, oh, it wasn't a player revolt at all. There's no way that could have happened. Well, somebody's leaving something out here.
Well, to play devil's advocate, Jonathan, if I am also working at Philly.com, and I happened to say some things to our boss that ended up getting you dismissed, and you and I go out for a drink afterwards, and you say, hey, Roche, do you have anything to do with me getting fired? What do you think my response is going to be to your face?
Yeah, right.
Of course not, Jonathan.
But here's the thing that gets me about this. They could have done it right after the Algarve Cup. Never mind the fact they did it right after a win.
Yes.
They could have done it right after the Algarve Cup instead of a week before the NWSL season starts, or whatever it is. Because when you do that, you think about the coaches in the NWSL who might be candidates for this job, especially Paul Riley up in Portland, who just took the Thorns job, who's just now getting settled in there. And it's a lot harder, I would think, to pull somebody out of there when the season's about to start than it would have been a month ago.
Good point. That's a good point. I thought you were going to say you've got the whole team, the whole squad is together. Now you know for a fact that you're not going to have them together, at least for the beginning of the league season. So how are you supposed to build continuity when you're really not going to have the team together?
Well, they probably tell you that Jill Ellis, takes care of that because she's been part of the team for so long. But no, it's very strange timing, and it's very unsettling timing. And they better get this decision right, whoever ends up making it. Because if they don't, for the amount of time that's left between now and the World Cup, it could be a big problem.
Does it matter that we don't know what happened? Like in the grand scheme of things, is it really going to affect anything that the public or the media has no idea what was going on behind the scenes?
Again, after the World Cup next year. If they win it, then it didn't matter. If they don't win it, then maybe it does matter a bit.
How much do you buy into the rest of the world has caught up to United States women's soccer?
I think there's enough countries that have. I mean, look, they haven't won a World Cup since '99. I know they've won the Olympics, but not easily. And Japan's really good. Germany and Canada are really good. France is really good. I think Brazil has fallen off a little bit. But, no, there's more than enough good teams out there that I don't think the U.S. will have it easy at all next year.
Yeah, and I mean, I bring that up because it's not a situation where it's, it doesn't matter who coaches. This team's going to be successful no matter what. If those days are in the past, then it does matter who's coaching. Then maybe this did need to happen.
And it's got to be somebody who can manage all the personalities on this team. Because there are some pretty big personalities, young and old. And look, there's some exceptional talent. Any coach on the planet would want to be able to coach the kind of talent that the U.S. has. But you still have to make all those players play well together, and have them go out there and win a World Cup when everybody can be gunning for.
I'm going to use you to just say something here, Jonathan, and hopefully, and I'll throw this out to the Pitch Pass listeners, and feel free to hit us up on Twitter at Pitch Pass or email us pitchpass@gmail.com. I'm asking you about this because it's a huge news story, but there is a part of me that always thinks in the back of my mind, hey, just because I'm a fan of U.S. soccer and specifically men's U.S. soccer, does that automatically have to make me a fan of women's soccer? Because I'll be honest with you, I don't really love women's soccer. Will I watch for the Olympics and the World Cup? Yes, but day-to-day operations, I'm not really losing too much sleep over what happens with women's soccer. How did it become to be that Americans who like men's soccer also have to like women's soccer?
They don't.
Do you find that, though? Am I crazy to have that thought?
Well, no. You're not crazy to have it. But I think the part of the women's soccer community that makes that case is also, a little too extreme for its own good. And my view of it is my own view of it. I don't necessarily ask anybody else to have that same view if they don't want to. I happen to believe that soccer is soccer, and I don't care who plays it.
Interesting.
Whether it's men's or women's, I view basketball and tennis and track and field and ice hockey and whatever else, I do it all the same way. I don't care who's playing. I happen also to be, a proponent of Title IX and equal rights and all those other things. It's my own choice. I don't impose it upon anybody else. But then again, that's why I have a smaller Twitter following than a lot of the other talking heads out there in the world, because my ego isn't big enough.
It's a very, very fair point. My retort would be, well, I do like soccer. I like the Dutch league, but I don't know much about the Brazilian league. I mean, to me, women's soccer is just another facet of the entire global picture of soccer, of which I follow certain aspects of it. And, I look at MLS teams or even independent blogs, and I'm thinking specifically about Dynamo Theory because they tweet a lot about the Houston Dash, and I go, well, I follow Dynamo Theory because I care about the Houston Dynamo because I like MLS. I don't know anything about the Houston Dash, nor do I seem like I really want to get into the Houston Dash. So those tweets for me are like, okay, can I get back to hearing about the Dynamo?
Well, so look, I'm big into college basketball, as you know.
Yes.
As a lot of other people know. I am a baseball fan. I'm a hockey fan. I'm actually coming to you right now. You're listening live to the Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia because I'm covering the Frozen Four, the NCAA hockey semifinals this week. I like lots of different sports, and that's okay. But I have a Twitter feed for soccer and a Twitter feed for college sports and a Twitter feed for my personal life.
Exactly.
Because I know that the soccer people don't care about college basketball, and fine. If you don't want me to force you to like college basketball, I might try to get you to like college basketball.
Yeah.
But if you do, and I'm not getting run over by a Zamboni here, so I'm kind of walking and talking at the same time. If it's going to happen, I'm going to convince you on merit. I'm not going to force you to do it.
It's a great point, and it's a perfect analogy, and I want the point across from my point of view. Look, I'm not bagging on women's soccer. I don't hate women's soccer. I just don't have an interest in women's soccer. So you're right. Let's have a feed for the thing that I care about. The reason I'm following you now. Speaking of your Twitter feed at The Goalkeeper, you broke some news last week. I was very proud of you, and I was very proud. I was like, oh, look at my man Jonathan Tannenwald. I know him, and he breaks news. So tell us all about Atlanta.
I get in trouble when I do this, because I'm not from there, which is okay.
It's
Look,
fine.
they're going to have a Major League Soccer team in 2017. It's going to be owned by the Atlanta Falcons. They're going to play in the Falcons' new stadium. It's going to have a retractable roof right in the middle of downtown Atlanta next to Georgia Dome. Now, that's the facts. Easy enough. And they're going to play on turf, too, which is a debate for another day.
Yes.
But here's the question, because a lot of people are ragging on Atlanta. They say it's a terrible sports town.
That's what they say. It's
not a great soccer town.
Yeah. You can put a period after terrible sports town. That's what people don't like about it.
Soccer in the South will never work because the South is anti-soccer. Blah, 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 blah. First question. You ever been to Charleston?
Have. Beautiful city.
They got a soccer stadium there, right?
They love their soccer there.
Okay. Is that in the South?
Yes.
You ever been to Birmingham, Alabama?
No.
Okay. You know the U.S. national team used to play there a bunch?
Yes.
Okay. Is that in the South?
Yes.
You ever been to Nashville?
I was going to say, when are you going to bring up Nashville? Another great soccer town.
Are they in the South?
Yes.
Okay. So, does the South hate soccer? Well, it must.
No. My problem isn't with the South. My problem's with Atlanta.
Okay, fine. But there's a lot of people who are writing off the South entirely and saying that Atlanta won't work.
I say Atlanta won't work because it's a terrible, terrible sports town. Terrible.
Well, and here's my counter-argument to that. You've got a big Hispanic population, in fact, that is growing really, really fast.
Yes.
And to say that MLS teams cannot get Hispanic fans is false, and not because of the data. It's because they aren't marketing smart enough. You ask anybody who was in Washington in the late 90s and early 2000s, it can be done.
Yes.
It's a very transient city. There's a lot of people who have come there from elsewhere, and they're not Braves fans or they're not Falcons fans, but they might become fans of the soccer team because they'd like something, that's Atlanta that they can grab onto. And here's a dirty little secret for you. There's a lot of people in Seattle who are not from Seattle, and they're not Mariners fans, they're not Seahawks fans, but they're Sounders fans, but because it's something that they could, take hold of. Who's to say Atlanta's not going to work the same way?
Okay, that's an interesting point, and I will give you that.
The Seattle fans aren't going to like hearing that because there's a little bit too much truth about it.
Yeah, I know. And you didn't have to Seattle just brought the point home. I thought the point on its own was very, very good. And you could be right. What about the turf? I was under the impression that one of the initiatives or one of the mandates for expansion was to gradually do away with turf. And if you want to talk to me about Cascadia teams needing turf for the environment, fine. You can't tell me that in Atlanta we can't have natural grass.
No, I can't. But if you want to have a retractable roof over the place, I don't know. Look, the technology might get better between now and then, both in terms of grass and in terms of quality of artificial turf that's out there. The turf in Portland's really good. I don't know what the heck makes it so different from anywhere else. I know that NFL teams sort of like their artificial turf to be a little shorter and harder than soccer does, which is a problem. But it's a tough one to answer because as I said, even by 2017, the technology might be totally different. Now, let me ask you one other question, by the way, while we're doing this.
Go ahead.
All the people who are ragging on Atlanta, left and right, who are, saying they can't work. How many of them live north of Richmond?
Well, most of them.
I can't help pointing that out. I think it's worth mentioning that a lot of the people who are ragging on Atlanta and who are saying it's not going to work don't live in the South, don't live in Atlanta. A lot of the folks down there are really excited. And the reason why I bring that up is because the expansion that I think Atlanta most compares to is not Orlando or Miami. It's Philadelphia in 2010. When MLS went into a very entrenched sports market where all of its teams have deep roots and weren't really going to be budged, and MLS had to carve out a niche from that. And there was a lot of excitement elsewhere around the American soccer community. Old Philadelphia's going to be a smashing success. They've got the Sons of Ben. They're a great sports town. They got passionate fans. But in Philadelphia, there was a lot of skepticism, and there still is. Atlanta is a very entrenched sports town. As we know, they have SEC football, and they have SEC football. And they got more SEC football. And then they got the Braves, the Falcons, the Masters, and NASCAR, right?
I have to disagree with you, though, on that point, because Philly, first of all, Philly supports the teams that are already there. Your point about Atlanta, not many people are from Atlanta, so they don't have an attachment. It doesn't translate perfectly to Philly because everybody in Philly is born and raised
Philly.
and will die in Philadelphia. Also,
That's correct.
Philly supported a minor league hockey team. Philly supports an indoor lacrosse team. Philly,
not all that. Well, they supported the hockey team because it's hockey, because they hit people. They didn't really support the indoor lacrosse team or the arena football team all that much. And look, the skepticism about Philadelphia was in Philadelphia, and the Union fans, everybody looks at PPL Park on TV and sees the big crowds and the Sons of Ben, and they think it's great, and it is, for 3 hours on Saturday. The rest of the week,
true,
they're Eagles fans and Phillies fans and Flyers fans, and I think you, of all people, probably know that better than anybody else.
True. Now, but as soon as you made the first comparison to Philly, the first thing I thought of is, what is the name of the Atlanta supporters group that has been so vocal and passionate that have demanded that the league come to Atlanta? Because I don't know the name of that supporters group.
Well, it's called the Terminus Legion, and you're right that they're not on the same scale as Philadelphia support us. But, you know, that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of support in Atlanta and a lot of skepticism outside of Atlanta. And in Philadelphia, there was a lot of support outside of Philadelphia and a lot of skepticism in it, and we should keep that in mind.
True. At the end of the day, here's what concerns me, bothers me, annoys me about Atlanta getting a team. It smacks of, oh, we just need a top 10 market. Atlanta's the last one. Let's get them. Oh, Miami didn't work before, but they're a huge television market. Let's get them in. And that wouldn't be a problem if you told me that one day Nashville would have a team, San Antonio would have a team, St. Louis would have a team, Minneapolis would have a team, Indianapolis would have a team. These towns where it's been proven that these secondary markets that don't have the four major sports, when you bring soccer, a major professional league, to their market, they are embraced by these smaller cities, regardless
I hear
of
you,
that.
but you got to make money sooner or later.
I agree. That's just where I go, oh, great. So Atlanta and Miami are going to have to struggle to be the seventh or eighth thing in the sporting page. Meanwhile, a great soccer town like St. Louis or Nashville, where they would immediately become a top three professional club, one of those two cities is not going to get a team.
I agree with you on St. Louis and Minneapolis. I don't agree with you on Nashville, and I don't agree with you on Indy. Look, I know Peter Wilt really well. I got a lot of friends who live out in Indianapolis. But before Peter Wilt walked through that door, that was not a soccer town at all. What has happened in Indianapolis, yes, there were some soccer fans there already, but what has happened there in terms of building up a culture is a testament to Peter Wilt more than it's Indianapolis, I think.
Fair enough. But between Minneapolis and St. Louis, one of those teams isn't going to get a MLS.
Where's the owner in St. Louis?
Well, but
where's the stadium in St. Louis?
Agreed. So
nowhere to be found.
Now,
and if that's the price, then that's the price.
Fair, but you know what? If that's the price and that's the price, but the price also was soccer-specific stadium with natural grass, and that's not the price. The price also is, before we give you a franchise, you need to have a stadium. There's no stadium in Miami, so that's not the price. So if the price is going to move,
and they don't have a team yet.
If the price is going to move,
this is in Miami. They don't have a team yet. Everybody thinks they absolutely do. They don't.
Can I just grumble about Atlanta a little more, Jonathan, please?
Let me say one other thing first.
Yes.
About Miami. And you can grumble about Atlanta all you want. Miami, the money in Miami speaks Spanish. And Major League Soccer needs to do that more if it wants to really succeed.
I mean, to me,
that's why it's important for them to be in Miami.
Okay. And
now, tee off on Atlanta all you want.
No. To me, those two cities are just the representation of my concern, which is, are we just following TV money and flushing any rule that we may have put in place down the toilet, or are we trying to build a league of passionate supporters? And, obviously, I think now that Atlanta is going to be announced, the next team I hope will be one of those teams where passion is more important than market size or TV ratings or anything. It's just one of those because there's only really room for one more.
I think that it will be, and the reason why I think it will be is that MLS has sort of done things in twos. They did New York City, which is for the money, and Orlando, which was for the fans.
Yes.
Miami is a little different, obviously, but they're doing Atlanta, which is for the money.
Yes.
And now they've got room to do either Minneapolis or San Antonio and have a piece of the fans.
Agreed.
But the passionates, the fans alone don't pay the bills. The fans alone, the existing fans alone, don't drive national TV ratings. So the ways that we all think that everybody in their own minds thinks this is the greatest, biggest deal. And a tenth of the number of people are watching soccer as are watching hockey or the NCAA women's basketball tournament now.
But Jonathan, my retort to that is a Red Bulls Chicago Fire, a Red Bulls DC United, huge rivalry. That's not going to drive ratings. I mean, the numbers that MLS gets, I could give a crap if it's New York or Portland that's playing. It's just we're putting a good product on television.
But the reason why the National Hockey League has done so spectacularly well over the last 5 or 6 years is not just because more people are paying attention. It's because Chicago and Boston and Philadelphia and LA are playing for the Stanley Cup every year. Major League Soccer's big city teams, Philly, New York, D.C., Toronto, Chicago, Boston, aren't that good.
At the end of the day.
The Philadelphia Union should be, ideally, in my opinion, the biggest ratings draw in the Eastern Conference of Major League Soccer in the United States.
That's a strong statement, Jonathan.
Think about how well Philly teams do in TV ratings on other sports.
Very true. Very true.
And I think because of the nature of the Philadelphia market and how everybody drives their attention in the Philadelphia sports teams, and it's a lot less fragmented than New York. That's why I said Philadelphia instead of Red Bulls.
Let's talk about the team that you do cover, and you just mentioned them. It's Philadelphia Union. When the McInerney Wenger trade went down, everybody was kind of scratching their heads. Then you dig a little deeper and you start really thinking about it, and it's not as much of a head scratcher, at least for me, as it looked like when I first heard the news. Where's your head at on that deal as of now?
Doesn't matter where my head's at. The only head in all this who matters is on top of Jack McInerney.
Why do you say him and not say Hackworth?
He has to grow up if he's going to realize the potential that is in him as a top caliber player.
Now, are you saying
he's not just going to be another Chris Wondolowski?
Are you saying this as somebody who covers the team every day? Because to me, Jack Mack's immaturity question is not something that I've ever thought about.
Well, it's not so much that. It's he's said over the last 8 to 12 months when John Hackworth has been trying to play a possession-oriented 4-2-3-1 that plays some better soccer than what they've played in the past. McInerney said, I'm better playing in a 4-4-2 than I am as a point man in a 4-2-3-1. I'd just like to, get some better service than I can score. I'd like to have a true number 10 playing behind me instead of, not so, subconsciously throwing the rest of his teammates under the bus. That's not his decision to make. he gets chances, but they're not always right on his foot. He's got to go and get the ones that aren't quite where he wants them if he wants to be the kind of player that's not a Chris Mondolowski, but is more a Hercules Gomez level and gets to that level with the national team that all these people think he can. And I think that's all in his head.
So when you found out about the deal, it wasn't a shocking situation for you.
And his contract, he's got one option year left on his contract after this year. And I've heard that option year is between $300,000 and $400,000. And I know he scored a lot of goals in the first half of last year, but outside of that,
yes,
is a 22-year-old really worth that much money?
One purple patch in his career.
4 years as a pro, by the reminder. 4 years as a pro. Yes, he's 21, but he's been in this for a while. And Nick DeSantis said he's gonna spend the money for the option. Good for them. I don't know that he's necessarily earned it, and I'm certainly even more than that. I'm not convinced that the fans in Montreal are going to put their money on the table to see their team's attack get led by a 22-year-old American.
So how important is it for him to glean as much information from DeVio, who seems to me is a very similar player to McInerney, not just on the field, but also picking his brain on being a professional and working under every circumstance?
It's absolutely crucial.
For him and for the United States, I would imagine, as a future national team mainstay, if he's ever going to be that.
Sure. But I bet you there's going to be another player just like him coming down the pike from somewhere in Major League Soccer, or maybe from somewhere in Germany, or maybe from somewhere in Munich, next week. And we're all going to go talk about him, and then he's not going to score 5 goals in his national team debut, and we're all going to declare him a bust right after that.
So let's look at
That's how we are.
Let's look at it from the Union point of view. What do you say, or what have you been saying to Union fans who, rightfully or mistakenly have put Jack Mack on this pedestal that maybe he doesn't deserve to be on, and he's now traded for a guy who hasn't really even played much since he's been in the league?
But here's the funny thing: you got two guys here who, even though they're very different styles of forward, what they share in common is that they've had their development stunted so far in Major League Soccer, and now maybe changing scenario will unlock some of their potential. There's a lot of Union fans down here who were getting a little tired of McInerney not delivering and complaining about it too much. And look, there's a lot of people who were not happy he was traded. But I think right now, the question is, can Andrew Wenger score goals? Because in Major League Soccer, you are only as good as the guy who comes along after you.
Can he score goals? Can he score goals in that system?
Can Andrew Wenger?
Yeah,
I think so. I don't even know score 20, but I think that he'll be fine. He'll be all right. And look, they may end up going abroad and signing a big name when all is said and done.
Last thing, go ahead.
No, it's just like McInerney has a lot to prove. Wenger has a lot to prove. Ackworth has a lot to prove. I'm just not going to jump everywhere and cast all the judgment right now, right away.
So last question on the Union. And, I felt like there was a little bit of a revitalization with their acquisitions in the offseason, bringing in the people that they did. And a lot of them have settled in nicely. Yet the results on the pitch are still kind of union-y, for lack of a better term. Does it feel different around the team this year? Yes, they're a much better team. They're a better team, simply put. So is everybody else in the Eastern Conference. Which means they have to raise their game even more. And look, the inability to close out games is incredibly frustrating. And at some point, Ackworth is going to have to hold the guys who are on the field to account, even if it means his veterans. But I still think they make the playoffs in the end, but they need Austin Berry healthy and playing. They need Andrew Wenger productive. They need Christian Maidana healthy and fit. And if they got all the pieces, look, Mauricio doing Vincent Nogueira have been spectacular. Yeah.
Leo Fernandez has been a great surprise. The potential's there. They've just got to – all that matters is winning at the end of the day.
We had Chris Rolfe on earlier, and we were joking around about the whole gelling scenario. And is it a situation? Have the results been kind of typical Philadelphia Union historically, even though this team is a lot better? Can you just mark that down to, well, these guys are still getting to know each other?
No, I don't think it's that. I think that they're committing brain farts, for lack of a better word, in the second half of games. That's not chemistry. That's just guys not closing out. I got to ask you about Chris Rolfe, though, one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
You sent him over to Councilwoman Bowser's office yet?
You mean future Mayor Bowser, please?
Well, I got to speak in the present, you know.
No, I did not. I would imagine she doesn't know much about Chris Rolfe and his history and what he would bring to the table. But, don't think that we're not nervous about what's going on with that stadium situation. Jonathan's referring to the fact that Vincent Gray, the mayor of D.C., who has put together the stadium deal, which, by the way, still has not gone through yet, will not be getting another term. He's basically a lame duck. And so the next Democratic candidate, who historically would probably be your next mayor, has already come out and kind of hedged her bets and saying, I don't know if this is the best deal, so we might be back at square one. Jonathan, thank you for bringing up that great topic that makes everybody in D.C. feel really good about themselves.
Look, I can't help it. I bring it up with you every time I come on your show. And I've been bringing it up for too long. And I can't vote down there anymore, nor should I vote down there anymore. But I sure hope it gets done, because they deserve it.
Completely agree. And I will include myself as part of the they that you were referring to as they deserve it, along with the franchise and the rest of the supporters. We're cautiously optimistic here that, a lot of posturing goes on in the D.C. City Council. So we're hoping that this deal, either Gray gets it pushed through before he leaves, or that Muriel Bowser isn't as against the deal as she was saying leading up to the election. So, we're cautiously optimistic. Let's leave it at that, Jonathan.
Better than being your classic, Philadelphia negativity.
Exactly. Well, on that note, really appreciate the uplifting conversation, Jonathan. It's always a pleasure. I'm going to let you get back into covering that Frozen Four.
Thanks, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Pitch Pass.
This is your voice. This is my red, white, and blue. This is my anthem to you.
For more show information, go to pitchpass.com.